As always, I like to start off with a fresh new blade. I'm not actually cutting the tape here, I'm just lightly scoring it deep enough so I can rip it off. If you try to cut through the tape, there's a very good chance you will cut deep enough and gouge the plastic below, and we do not want to do that. And here I am using just a very tiny piece of tape to act as a patch, because when I cut through that layered bit, the edge got a little furry. The Hobby Design kit came with a frame, a metal photo etch frame that goes around the slider on the window. I did not use that. Looking at the 1-to-1 car, the windows are made out of Lexan, just like the rear window. The slider, it does not have a metal frame, it is just bare Lexan to Lexan, so when you look at it, it's all just scratched up and worn out. Now just repeat for the other side. I mentioned it in the previous build, the clear parts we saw out. We do not snap them off or cut them off with sprue cutters. I've been told the clear parts do not have the rubberizer in them like regular plastic. That makes them very stiff and brittle, and they're very prone to cracking and breaking. So using a saw is just a very stress-free way of removing them from the sprue. And when I'm masking, I like to use the sharp end of a toothpick only to define the edge. Then I'll flip it over and I'll use the dull end to actually burnish that down. In the past, I've had the sharp end actually poke through the tape, and I've had to replace it all. So I learned my lesson. I just realized we're at about the 5-minute mark of me just masking and talking about it, so let's jump ahead. Yeah, this is a lot more fun than watching me mask it off, yeah? And my rear bonnet, I mentioned it does not fit very well, and I am okay with that because this is going to be displayed with it up. However, the rear bonnet was also slightly warped, and I did not realize that till it was time to glue this in. And to get around that, I will use the UV hardening glue and go around in very tiny dabs all around the perimeter, sort of like spot welding the window in, except we're doing it with glue. The rear window holds its shape a whole lot better than the thin plastic around it, so once it's all glued in, it will hold the rear bonnet pieces in shape. This UV glue is amazing. I highly recommend you guys get some of it if you get a chance. It holds the parts in very well. It's just as strong as any super glue, and it dries super clear. I would like to meet the engineer at Tamiya who thought that these windows were a good idea. It utilizes a piece of the body panel on the bottom edge of the window. So I had to do a lot of masking, line that up, and now there's a gap because I can't use any body filler. It's not a good thing. And just like the window in the rear bonnet, I'm going to spot weld, is what I'm going to start calling it now. I'm going to spot weld the window in, then I'm going to go back and reinforce it with some glue later. And I could do the whole window in this stuff, but that would be very wasteful, and this stuff's kind of expensive. And the Hobby Design kit came with the photo etch windshield wiper blade. I have used those once in all my builds, and installing it like I am here, all it did was scratch up the windshield. So I have never used that in any of my builds since. And this front windscreen took a lot of test fitting. The tabs were too long and the window left a big ugly gap of the roof line. I'm satisfied with that fit, so I'm going to spot weld it in. Now this piece is going to be 100% visible, and it also holds in the rear bonnet. So I'm going to be using Super Gold Plus just so it doesn't fog. And this piece also dictates the final position of the rear bonnet. So before you glue it in, make sure you have it taped in place exactly where you want it to be, because you will not be able to move it again once it's glued in, well, other than opening and closing it. Since I had added that heat shield, this part does not fit that well. So I had to cut just a little bitty tiny sliver off of it to get it to fit. And here you'll see I'm starting to get tired because I forgot to put glue on it. And I did not like the rearview mirror on this car. Even though the mount is glued in straight, the mirror part itself is facing the driver, so it always looks like it's crooked. I also like to glue in the side view mirrors as the very last thing I do, just so I don't knock them off during assembly. This body mounts to the chassis with just a pin. There's no pulling, no stretching, no forcing, nothing. So I did it now just to be on the safe side. And just like the side view mirrors, the wheels are the next to last thing that I install. I have big hands and fat stubby fingers, so I like to leave all that room in the wheel well for me, just in case I need to flex out the body or do any twisting, just to get it to fit over the chassis. And speaking of which, we are now going to do that. You'll see how easy this is and how very little work it required. And that's it. That is it. This is the very last part to be installed. After that, this car is done. And here are the glamour shots of the completed car. And I do realize I forgot to add the metal transfers. I added them later. I don't know why I forgot. If you don't believe me, you can see the final photos uploaded on Instagram at insomnia_hobbies. Thank you so much for following along on another build. As always, like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Thank you.